Hi everyone, good afternoon. I'm so happy to be here. My name is Ray, and I want to welcome you to another one of Villarte's art workshop. Today we are going to be making Papel Picado. Before we get started, I just want to let you know that this is a recorded session, so just be aware, just do know that your cameras will not be recorded, but if you do have a question and speak in it, your audio will be captured. If you could do us a favor and at this moment just mute yourself, that would be really, really helpful. Hola a todos, bienvenidos. Me llamo Ray y yo les voy a estar enseñando cómo hacer un poquito de papel picado. Les quiero dejar saber de que esta sesión se está grabando y sus cámaras no van a ser capturadas, pero si tienen una pregunta y hablan, su voz va a ser grabada. The team at Villarte was able to record and send out a lot of kits, and in your kits, you should have received a couple of things that we're going to be needing today. We're going to be needing some tissue paper, which you should have about 20 sheets. So if you are a family, you could all share. You also should have received, or if you have at home, a pair of scissors. And then for additional things, you could also use a glue stick, which I will show you later. If you don't have a glue stick, you could also use liquid weight glue. En los estuches de paquete que recibieron del equipo de Villarte, deberían haber recibido unas hojas de papel, aproximadamente 20 hojas. También algunos de ustedes recibieron un par de tijeras. También unos materiales adicionales van a ser un glue stick y un pegamento blanco líquido. Okay. At any time, if you guys have any questions, feel free to put it in the chat. I'll raise your hand or just unmute yourself and ask your question. I love being asked as I go along. Si tienen alguna pregunta durante esta demostración, por favor, levanten la mano, pongan su pregunta en el chat o quítanse el mute para hacer su pregunta y yo con gusto puedo contestarlas. All right, so we're gonna get started. First am gonna show you how to make some of these right here. These are my nice little background, but for the sake of making everything clearer, I'm just gonna cover it right now. Por el momento vamos a cubrir el fondo. Vamos a estar haciendo unos papeles picados muy similares a estos y por eso voy a cubrirlo para que se pueda bien ocultar. Lo primero que vamos a hacer es que vamos a tomar nuestra hoja de papel de este tamaño y vamos a doblarla a la mitad. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to take our tissue paper and we're going to fold it in half. And you should be able to run your fingers through the crease to make sure that it's nice and flat. También asegúrense de que cuando doblemos el papel, estemos usando nuestra yema del dedo para aplanar bien el doble. Luego lo volteamos. We're going to turn that. And then we're going to fold it one more time, making sure that our edges are matching. Nos vamos a dar un doble otra vez hasta que las orillas estén parejas. Bien. Y si gustan y si quieren, podemos hacer otro doble. And if you want, we could also make another double here. But for the sake of just this presentation, I'm going to give you a quick sample, right, of what to cut. Por esta presentación les voy a demostrar un ejemplo de qué cortar y no cortar. The thing about papel picado is about making little gaps in the paper. Para hacer el papel picado es hacer hoyitos entre el papel. Como este es un papel doblado, no podemos cortar a través ni tampoco para arriba. O sea que tenemos que tener un área de corte de este tamaño. So because this is folded paper and the aim of making papel picado is to make a lot of little open holes, there's a couple of things that we have to keep in mind. We can't cut that way across because otherwise we have two pieces, and we can't cut up and down because again, we will have two pieces. La zona que podemos cortar es donde está doblado. So the side that we have to cut from is on the middle, where it's the spine of the fold. So if you hold it on one side, it should look like a little book or a notebook. Si lo sostienen de un lado, parece como una libreta, un libro, y del otro lado está la espina. On the other side is the spine, where all the folds meet. So what we're gonna do is that we're gonna cut from the folds out and close to the edge, but not across. Lo que vamos a hacer es que vamos a tomar la espina donde están los dobles y vamos a cortar diseños hacia la orilla de este lado, pero no hasta la orilla. I drew some samples that I would like to show you here, right? So it might be a little hard to see, but pretend that this is your tissue paper and pretend that this is your template for cutting, right? Hice un ejemplo para que vean cuáles son las zonas que voy a estar cortando en este papel. Hagan de ejemplo de que este es el papel y estos son los cortes que voy a estar haciendo. So once again, taking from the inside where the fold is, not the loose edges, I'm going to start cutting these same patterns. Voy a empezar a cortar de donde están todos los dobles, no donde están las hojas sueltas, y voy a empezar a cortar mis figuras. So I'm going to start cutting out my shapes. And typically, you could use any shape you like. There's no right or wrong. Pueden usar cualquier figura que ustedes quieran, corazones, círculos, estrellas. You could do stars, you could do geometric shapes, you could do hearts. There's no wrong in this. And as you can see here, I'm kind of starting to copy the pattern. Y como ven aquí, ya estoy empezando a copiar el diseño. Otra vez, si están empezando, recuerden, no del lado donde están las hojas sueltas. Remember that if you're just starting, do not cut on the side of the open pages. You want to cut from the center to the sides, but you don't want to go across, okay? Recuerden que queremos cortar del centro hacia las orillas, pero no llegando hasta la orilla. Okay. Mientras ustedes practican, yo también les voy a estar contando un poquito sobre la importancia del papel de muertos durante la celebración del Día de Muertos. El papel picado es una tradición que viene desde nuestra cultura indígena en México, antes de la colonización. Los indígenas celebraban a los muertos, pero celebraban la memoria de los muertos. So, I want to talk to you a little bit about the symbolism of papel picado for the Mexican culture during Dia de los Muertos. El papel picado is an element of the ofrendas that we typically made for the memory of our dead, the people that have passed on. As you know, today we celebrate El Día de Muertos. And this papel picado symbolizes a gate between the living and the world, right? Because our indigenous people believe that the spirits got to come back and celebrate with us, right? And it was a way of honoring their life, of honoring their memory, right? And what we did was that we would provide an earthly delight, right? O sea que cuando los espíritus vuelven durante el Día de los Muertos, nosotros les celebramos su memoria y les ofrecemos un festín con todas las cosas que ya no tienen en la vida eterna. The indigenous people started to put ofrendas right around the time where the monarch butterflies come into Mexico. Los grupos indígenas empezaban a poner sus ofrendas cuando empezaban a llegar las mariposas monarcas para invernar en la zona de Michoacán. There was a belief that when someone died, the person who had passed on, their soul would go up into heaven carried by a monarch butterfly. Había una creencia de que cuando una persona fallecía, su alma se elevaba al cielo transportada por una mariposa monarca. So, cuando ellos empezaron a ver que los monarcas regresaban a la zona de México, ellos celebraron las memorias de todos aquellos que hayan fallecido porque los estaban visitando. So when the monarch butterflies would come back to Mexico, they believed that they celebrated their people that had passed on because they were returning, right? It's just for a season. The indigenous people believed that you needed to have all four elements of life in the ofrendas. So these ofrendas had all the things that they don't have in the afterlife, right? These are the four elements of life, which is earth, wind, fire, and water. Las ofrendas, los indígenas creían que las ofrendas deberían tener los cuatro elementos de la vida, que es la tierra, el agua, el viento y el fuego, ¿verdad? Typically when you see an ofrenda, you see these elements displayed, right? Like the earth is symbolized by everything that's edible, right? La tierra es simbolizada por todo lo que se come, la fruta, el chocolate, el mole, todo aquello que viene de la tierra. Water, which is another very important element of an ofrenda, is solely a glass of water, right? The idea is that these spirits come from far, far away and they're parched, they're thirsty when they get to us. So we want to offer them a glass of water, and water is life, right? We cannot live without water. So it's another little taste of something they don't have anymore. El elemento del agua es simplemente representado por un vaso de agua. La idea es de que nuestros espíritus vienen de muy, muy, muy lejos para venir a visitarnos, y es por eso que nosotros les ofrecemos un traguito de agua, porque también el agua es vida, ¿verdad? And then we have fire, right? Tenemos el fuego, y el fuego es representado por el cempasúchil, right? Hace un rato vimos un taller que dio Esther sobre cómo crear esos cempasúchiles. A little while ago, we had a workshop with Esther who was showing us how to do cempasúchiles, which was really awesome. Indigenous people believe that cempasúchil symbolizes fire, right? So they use a lot of those flowers so that the spirits who are coming from the darkness are guided by the orange, right? And the flames and the candles, right? O sea que los indígenas usaban el cempasúchil como simbolismo del fuego, porque la idea es de que los espíritus vienen del oscuro, y el color naranja y rojo y amarillo los ayudaba a hallarse a las ofrendas que le habíamos preparado. And finally, the last element is the wind element. Now, I know we were just talking about making this, right? It's papel picado. Papel picado, basically what it means is to pierce paper or to cut paper. So as I was giving you a little bit of a background, I was cutting along, and I hope that you guys had a little bit of time to just kind of experiment. I'm going to repeat this soon, so don't worry if you feel like you're lost. Voy a volver a repetirme pronto en caso de que se hayan perdido. El papel picado es importante para celebrar el viento, porque la idea era de que el papel picado servía como una reja entre la vida de los que ya no están aquí con la vida de los vivos. O sea que el papel picado típicamente se cuelga encima o arriba de las ofrendas. Typically we see papel picado on top of the ofrendas because it represents gates between the living and the dead worlds, right? And so these little holes help the spirits kind of come through. Como podemos ver, tenemos muchos hoyitos, y así es como nosotros podemos crear este papel. Vamos a volver a otro. We're going to go ahead and start a new one. And once again, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. Si tienen alguna pregunta, por favor, pónganla en el chat o usen su micrófono para hacer su pregunta. All right, here we go. I'm going to use a bright color so you guys can see a little bit what I'm doing. Bear with me. So everybody should have a nice piece of tissue, right? In this case, I'm using construction paper just so that you guys can see it better. Pero cada uno debería tener un pedacito de papel china. Si no tienen papel china, una libreta, un periódico, una revista también funciona. If you don't have any of this paper, you can use a notebook, you can use a newspaper, you can use a magazine too, right? So vamos a empezar a cortar. Vamos a tomar la parte de abajo y la vamos a doblar por la parte de arriba, así. So we're going to take our bottom part and we're going to line it up to the edge on top, just like that. And then we're going to fold along the middle. Okay. And then we're going to switch. And then we're going to fold this over to the side. Y ahora lo que vamos a hacer es que vamos a doblar de esta orilla a esta orilla. Okay. if you open it up, you should have 4 sides or 4 different segments. Si lo abren, deberían ver 4 secciones. Hold it up again, lo volvemos a doblar. And now, here's the cutting part. Remember, we're not cutting on the open side. This is the open side, right? It looks like a notebook. We're cutting on this side, right? So we always want to start on this side. I'm left-handed, so I always start on this side. But if you are right-handed, you can just flip it, and you can cut the other way, okay? Yo soy zurdo y es por eso que siempre uso la espina del lado izquierdo, pero si ustedes son diestros, pueden voltearlo y la espina está del lado derecho, ¿ok? Recuerden que vamos a cortar del centro, cerca de la orilla, pero no otra vez. So we are cutting from the center, the folded center, right? Not the loose end. And we're going to cut across, but we're not going to cut through, right? We just want to get close to the edge. If you make a mistake, guess what? It's okay. It's just a piece of paper. Always more paper, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and get started, and you could do whatever shape you want, all right? I like to do a lot of skinny triangles. And again, you can see that I'm cutting on the folded side, right? Not the open side. And so I'm just gonna keep cutting, right? I don't really have anything in mind when I cut these. I just kind of go with it. And typically I am super happy. Sometimes I'm really surprised that I get some really cool shapes, right? And again, remember, I'm cutting from the center, close to the edge, but not going beyond, okay? Empecé a cortar este papelito, no tengo ningún patrón, simplemente estoy cortando a mi gusto. A veces que me sorprendo porque salen unos patrones muy buenos. Y realmente no puedes hacer un error con esto, right? You can't really make a mistake with this, right? So again, I'm cutting a lot of little edges. I want something a little bit more like geometric, but then if I want to change it, for example, if you want to make a heart, you just kind of want to make a teardrop eye, right? Like just kind of like that, right? So that when you open it, you actually get that heart shape, right? And I'm going to turn this into a flower. So I'll see if I can make it. And again, I don't have a pattern. You shouldn't be too concerned about doing something that looks great, right? This is just papel picado. As long as it makes you happy, as long as you put your love into it, it's fantastic, and no one else is going to be able to tell you otherwise, right? O sea que ahorita por ejemplo, estoy tratando de cambiar este patroncito que hice de un corazón. Mucha gente me pregunta cómo hacer un corazón. Y para hacer un corazón simplemente hacemos como una gotita, porque cuando la abrimos, ahí se nota que ahí está el corazón. Ahorita lo que estoy haciendo es que estoy tratando de convertir esta pieza y esta pieza en una flor. So right now I'm just experimenting, right? I'm just cutting along. And again, remember, not on the open side, only on the closed side. I'm gonna keep cutting real quick. Okay. And I know I'm very fast, and if you're taking your time, guess what? That's perfect. Do take your time. You don't have to be exact. Remember, a lot of us are learning this for the very first time. And part of it is that we have to make mistakes and we have to be okay with it. And guess what? Like I said earlier, it's a piece of paper. There's more paper in your bag, okay? Ahorita lo que estoy haciendo es simplemente finalizando, okay? Recuerden, del centro hacia la orilla, pero no atravesando, right? So now I finished cutting all my pieces, right? You can see they're from the center. And I'm gonna open them. At any time, if you have questions, please let me know. Si tienen preguntas, por favor, déjenme saber. And I'm opening.
I have a question.
Hi.
Hi. Okay, so how do you make like the skulls? Do you do half of a skull? Like, do you draw half of a skull?
Yes, definitely. So you can do half a skull. Maybe I can whip one up. Typically, what I like to do is that I like to set out my pattern, right?
Okay.
For more complicated papel picado, this is freehand papel picado, which is more closely styled after the indigenous people, right? They would use something more like this. The traditional papel picado that you see with images is done using a punch system. So you get a lot of sheets and then you use a piercing tool and you just kind of carve out the papel that way. That is a little bit more modern. It's really beautiful. I typically do it by hand, but this year it wasn't just something that I wanted to focus on, right? But I have some examples and I can definitely share with Villarte later so you guys can see some of those examples on how to cut kind of like a grid system. O sea que me estaba preguntando Isabel, ¿verdad? Que cómo se puede hacer una calavera, ¿verdad? Y lo que estoy diciendo es de que esta manera de hacer papel picado es un poquito más al estilo indígena, donde eran dobles y cortes, pero ese tipo de imágenes que se encuentran en el papel picado está hecho con una encuadra, donde básicamente se usa una navajita para cincelar el estilo, y ahí sí se hacen muchos de esa manera. Pero ahorita vamos a ver si podemos hacer uno. Okay, we're going to see if we can make one using this system, right? And voila, right? Aquí tenemos ya dos piezas, ¿verdad? Si quieren llenar este centro más, podemos volver a doblar, right? So if you want to fill the center up, you're like, it looks okay, right? I like to have a lot of little open spaces, right? So I'm just going to cut again from the center, and I just want to, I don't know, just give it some like little barbs, you know, cutting out like little tiny triangles, and then I think I'm gonna round out the edge, just because I use a lot of these as banners. Yo uso muchos de estos papeles picados así para hacer guirnaldas y para decorar los ¿cómo se llama? Pasillos, o para hacer regalos. And you can see here, I have another piece right there, right? It's funny because I just realized that I keep making papel picado that looks like an owl. This is the second one today. Me estoy dando cuenta de que estoy cortando papel picado y sin querer estoy haciendo búhos. Pero me gusta. Okay. Let's try to make a calavera. Let's see how that goes. Okay. I'm going to use green paper. And again, I'm using construction paper just because it shows really, really well with the camera. Estoy usando papel de construcción simplemente porque se ve muy bien en cámara. Pero ustedes pueden usar periódico, libretas, revistas viejas. You can use newspaper, you can use tissue paper, copy paper. It doesn't really matter to make these style papel picado, right? So I'm gonna try to do a papel picado skull, right? And what I like to do sometimes when I'm trying to get something, like typically, like I said, I don't really think about the pattern. I just kind of go along and I let it kind of feed me that way. Pero lo que estoy haciendo ahorita es de que voy a tratar de dibujar un patrón de una calavera y a ver si me sale. So I'm gonna try to do a that skull, right? Remember that sometimes it's difficult because when you see that type of papel picado, it's because someone actually used the knife and punched it out, which is awesome. I love that style too. But when you do this at home, it'll probably be something a little trickier. But let's try it, right? So the first thing I want to do is that I kind of want to set out my profile of the calavera, right? So I know that I have to cut from the center. So this is probably going to be tricky, right? But I will have to cut this section out, which means that I'm going to have to be really tricky. Otherwise, this is going to fall. And then from here, I'm going to try to draw what I think the eye sockets would look like. And then here, try to create like a curve from the esqueleto, from the jaw. No sé, estoy tratando de inventarme esta silueta de calavera. Típicamente yo tengo imágenes preparadas, pero este es algo que se pidió. ¿Y por qué no? A ver qué sale. It might come out great, it might not, but luckily we have enough paper to keep trying. So, I promise nothing, okay? No les prometo nada, pero vamos a ver cómo nos sale. So, I'm gonna cut these out. right? I'm not gonna cut the green out, right? So I'm just gonna keep, and then for the sake of time, I'm just going a little faster por nada más para ahorrar un poquito de tiempo. Voy a cortar un poco rápido. You know, I don't think this is gonna show up, so I'm gonna change it. And, so instead I'll do something like that. Oh wow, okay, let's see what happens. It looks like it has a runny nose and a mustache, which is not a good combination. Parece que tiene moquillo y un bigotote, que no es buena combinación. Alright, I'm cutting out the eyes. And now I have to cut the profile out, so I have to go this way. And again, if you have any questions at any time, feel free to let me know. Si tienen preguntas, por favor, usen el mic, pónganlo en el chat. Here we go. Okay. And this might look more like Frankenstein than a skull, but I think you guys get the idea. Este va a parecer más Frankenstein que una calavera, pero creo que van a poder. And as you can see, it does not look either like Frankenstein or a skull. Y como pueden ver aquí, no nos salió ni como Frankenstein ni como calavera. Let me see. I'm gonna think about this, right? And see if I can put one together before the end of this workshop. But for the sake of time, I would like to continue on to another piece. Let me know if you guys are let me know if you guys are ready to move on. I will give you guys maybe about 15 seconds to grab another fresh piece of paper. This time around, I'm going to show you something a little different. I'm going to show you how to create stretchy paper, or what I like to call it, spiderweb paper. This piece is going to be really fun. It's a little tricky. It's not as complicated as the other ones, right? So I will show you, and I think you will get the hang of it really quick. All right, I am going to grab a piece of paper. And again, I'm trying to use light color paper so you guys can see it. I know sometimes cameras seem to be really good, but sometimes when we're trying to work really closely with detail, it doesn't show up. So for this piece of paper, what we're going to do is that, oh, but wait, let me show you what we're going to do. So we are going to be making something that is going to help us make this. You see that? It's really cool, right? We're going to make little squares that look like spider webs. And then I'm going to show you how to put those together so that you can make a garland, right? So the first thing we're going to do is that we're going to take this piece right here. And again, we're going to take the short side of this piece. And we're going to line it up against the long side of your piece of paper. Fold it. Now, if you received the kits from Villarte, you should have known that they give you nice and perfectly edged pieces of paper. I had to cut this by hand, so I know my edge needs a little trimming, but I'll save that for later, right? So now that you cut this, what you're gonna do is that you're gonna flip it back. And this sheet right here, you're gonna bring this down so that the edge of the triangle matches the edge that you just folded. O sea que lo que vamos a hacer es que vamos a tomar nuestra hoja de papel y vamos a tomar la orilla corta, la vamos a cruzar contra la orilla larga y doblar. Ustedes deberían haber tenido un papel que está cortado parejo, pero yo como lo corté a mano, sé que esta orilla tiene que recortarse. Pero ahora también vamos a voltear este papel y vamos a doblar el resto del papel abajo hacia donde está el triángulo. So we're going to pull down. Now that we have that, we can take our scissors, right? Podemos tomar nuestras tijeras y vamos a recortar donde doblamos We're gonna cut the excess of paper. All right, we can save this. Podemos ahorrarnos un poquito de papel. Y ahora lo que vamos a hacer es de que vamos a tomar la parte de abajo y la vamos a doblar contra la parte larga. Right, so we're going to take the lower part of the triangle, right? And you know it's the lower part of the triangle because it opens. Sabemos que esta parte de abajo del triángulo porque se abre. Una hoja, dos hojas. One sheet, two sheet. Right? Vamos a doblar de esta manera. We're going to fold up like that. Right? And then we're going to fold one more time. Y vamos a doblar otra vez, una nueva vez más. Right? So you should have something about the size of half a sandwich, right? So deberían tener un triángulo más o menos del tamaño de la mitad de un sándwich, okay? Now here's the tricky part, and I'm gonna show you something that hopefully will help you. We're gonna be cutting the paper in zigzag. So that means that we're gonna cut from one side, and then we're gonna flip and cut from the other side, and flip and flip and flip, until we get this effect. Right? I like to call it the fish skeleton because if you pull it, kind of looks like a fish skeleton. See what I mean? Lo que vamos a hacer es de que vamos a hacer un corte en zigzag. Vamos a cortar de un lado, voltearemos y cortar del otro y repetimos hasta que nos resulte un efecto de este tamaño. A mí me gusta llamarle huesos de pescado porque si lo jalan parece huesos de pescado. Okay, but a lot of people have a hard time kind of figuring it out just from seeing it, right? So I drew up a little, kind of like a template of how to cut it. Y lo que hice pues es de que traté de hacer así como un molde de cómo cortar. And as you can see here, it's really simple, right? Vamos a tomar la parte larga del triángulo. We're going to take the long side of the triangle and hold it like a taco, right? We're going to hold it like a taco. And then we're going to start cutting from the lower side, right? And we're going to cut, but not go across the edges, right? Vamos a cortar de la parte de abajo y vamos a cortar hacia la orilla, pero no atravesando. Just like we did with the other papel picado. So, igual como lo hicimos con el otro papel picado de cortar hacia la orilla, pero no a través, igual con esto. So, I am going to cut this and this and this. So, every time I cut, I flip, right? For this sake, I'm going to leave this here. So, in case that you get stuck, you can kind of see as I go along, right? Voy a dejar este patrón aquí, pero mientras yo corto, por si se pierden pueden ver y también me pueden preguntar, okay? So we're gonna get started. My first cut is gonna be right there. So I'm cutting, and again, cutting really close to the edge, but not through, right? Estoy cortando cerca de la orilla, pero no a través, ¿verdad? And now that I cut, what I like to do is that I take the triangle top and then I point it down, and then I try to do as close as I can. Trato de acercarme lo más que pueda al corte, right? So I try to do it as close as I can. And the reason why I do it close is because the thinner these sections are, the more the paper stretches. And when the paper stretches, it's actually really, really pretty when you finish it. O sea que a mí me gusta hacer estas secciones bien delgaditas, porque entre más delgaditas, más se estira el papel. So the longer, the thinner you get them, the stretchier the paper is gonna get, right? And you can get some really cool length. Sigo cortando, right? Y como se dan cuenta, estoy cortando. I cut and I flip, I cut and I flip. Now I'm almost getting to the center, right? And I don't wanna go past the center, and I'll show you why. This is my top. I'm gonna stop right about there. Right? Esta es mi parte de arriba, el punto de arriba. Voy a parar más o menos por aquí. So maybe one more and one more. And that's it. See, it's already looking like a fish skeleton. O sea que voy a cortar corté en zigzag, cortaba, volteaba, cortaba, volteaba, y voy a llegar casi al centro del triángulo. Este es el centro, pero no hasta el centro. Y la razón por eso es que estas son las orillas, right? And the reason for why I asked you not to cut on this side is because these are the edges. Okay, so now I open. Voy a abrir despacito, right? Now we get to open our piece. And don't try to pull it apart. Typically what I do is that I go along the folded edges. No traten de desembarañándolo como pelo, sino que más bien donde están los dobles, nada más sepáranos ligeritos. Right? So you just want to be gentle because, again, this is paper, right? Tienen que tener un poquito de delicadeza porque es papel. Pero tampoco si se les quiebra, it's okay. Es papel, ¿verdad? Y si se les rompe, pues ni modo, hay otro papel, right? So just gentle pulling, right? I'm not really pulling. You can hear the paper. It's not tearing. It's just rattling, but it's fine, right? And so if we open it up, right? We opened it up. Looks really cool, right? It looks like a spider web, right? But the cool thing is that the center actually stretches really long, right? And it's really pretty, right? I've seen people put balloons inside and then hang them, right? I've seen a lot of people make garlands, right? Which is the one that I showed you a little bit ago. I like making these for ofrendas, but I also like making them for pretty much any celebration. For Christmas, you can make some pascuas out of this or poinsettias, like some pretty similar patterns. And those are really popular, right? Let's see, do you guys want to make another one of these real quick, or do you guys want to move on? ¿Tienen interés en hacer otro o le seguimos?
Can we make another one so that way you can show us how to connect them?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much. I was so excited that I totally forgot how to do that. All right. So, and you know what? I had my samples and I think I tossed them because if you are like me at all, whenever I make art, it's not a clean affair. It's usually messy, right? Si ustedes son como yo para hacer arte, no es limpio. Yo hago mucho desastre, pero I like it. It inspires me. Me gusta. Me inspira así todo el caos de papel por todas partes. Okay. So I'm quickly just cutting a bunch of paper so that I can catch up with you guys, right? So I showed you guys how to make a big one, but now I'm gonna make little tiny ones, and I'm gonna be a little quick just because we don't have a lot of time left. But I do want to make it clear enough so that you guys can follow along. And by the way, thank you guys, and thank you so much to the team at Villarte. You know, Villarte is such a wonderful festival. It brings so much to our La Vida community and beyond. Thank you so much for everybody who puts in all the work all year round to make this possible for me to share my abilities and my history with you guys. Is something I always look forward to, and like I told them, Villarte has become one of my family traditions. So great job, everyone. Yeah. Okay. Estamos doblando. Le mando agradecimientos al equipo de Villarte. Muchas gracias. Como artista a mí me han impactado mucho. Me encanta todo lo que traen a la comunidad de la Villita y más allá de la Villita. Gracias por esta oportunidad de dejarme compartir y felicidades. This is a great event and I always look forward to the next one. Right? Okay. We're folding, right? Thanks again for bearing with me. We have the open side, right? We have our long taco side, right? We have our taquitos, and we have the folded edge, right? So I am going to be cutting a couple of these at the time, right? Cut up, flip it over, cut down, flip it over. It gets a little trickier when you're doing a bunch of paper at once, right? Es un poquito más complicado al cortar varias hojas de papel a la vez. Pero te ahorra mucho tiempo. It does save up a lot of time when you're doing more than once, right? Typically that's what I do. Típicamente lo que yo hago cuando sé que tengo que producir mucho, uso 20, 25 hojas por corte. So I typically use 20, 25 pages per cut, right? And remember, I'm cutting one side, I'm flipping, cutting and flipping. I don't want to make two cuts on the same side. And I'm almost close to the tip, right? So I'm just going to stop right there, but I do want to get close to the edge, right? So I got my little skeleton guy, right? My little fishy. And oh, you guys, I cut the wrong side. I'm sorry about that. Let's get started again. This happens, as you can see. I am working a little bit in mirror effect, so bear with me. Acabo de cortar unos ejemplos que les estaba enseñando a ustedes y me salieron mal. Perdón, sé que estoy empezando a cortar de nuevo. All right, so I'm gonna cut one more time, real quick. This is another way that I fold, but I don't recommend it because it's not always the neatest, right? I'm just trying to catch up. Esta es otra manera donde yo corto. Let me see if I got this right. Yes, I got this right. So again, folded side, right? Folded side, open edges. I'm gonna cut real quick. Voy a cortar rápido para no demorarme. Cut and flip and cut and flip, right? Cortamos, volteamos, cortamos, volteamos. ¿Sí lo pueden ver? Estamos cortando y volteando. If you make a mistake and you make two cuts on the same side, like, okay, do that. You could always just fix it. Just go on the top, just cut in the middle, right? So I'm gonna cut right there. And you always wanna make sure they overlap, right? Make it a zigzag, don't make it like opposite vertical lines. Okay, got my folded paper, ya tengo mi papel doblado. Ahora sí ya sé que me salió because I got my fishy, right? My little fishies right there. So, si lo abro, aquí tengo mi telaraña, right? I have my little spider web, right? And so now that I have my spider web, I will be able to pull it. Sorry, it's a little tricky because there's a lot. Ahorita ya que veo que tengo mi telaraña, voy a jalar y puedo ver que el papel se estira, right? I can see that the paper is stretching. It's not very stretchy because it's a little big, but I am going to show you how to put that garland together. O sea que les voy a enseñar a cómo poner esa guirnalda, okay? So we're going to take one right here, and I am going to take a little bit of glue, right? Como les dije hace un rato, este es un utensilio extra, right? It's an extra tool that if you have it around, great. If not, you can use tape. You can use white glue, and I just took a little bit of it, but it's okay. Ahorita cuando estaba aplicando el pegamento se me fue un cachito, pero está bien. Recuerden, es papel. Just remember, it's paper, y'all. Don't take it too serious. Yo sé que hay mucha gente que tiene así mucha paciencia y cortan bien delicado, right? I know a lot of people are like really patient and really delicate, and they want to cut it. But it's paper, y'all. Like, just let it do what it does, right? Okay, so lo que hice fue de que conecté los cuatro esquinas, right? So I connected the four corners, right, with a little bit of glue stick, right? So that I have two-sided pairs, right? So tengo dos. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put this to the side. Voy a ponerlo al lado. Voy a agarrar otro de lo que corté, right? I'm going to take a little bit more of what I cut. And I might need to cut a little bit more right now, which is great. Okay, put a little glue right there. Little glue right there. Un poquito de pegamento en las esquinas. Y en las esquinas. I know that Esther was saying, I love working with paper because it's so light. And I'm like, you know what? Yes, it is. I love that for that reason too. Esther estaba diciendo en el taller de las cempasúchiles que a ella le gusta mucho trabajar con papel porque es muy ligero, que casi no pesa. Y a mí también por eso me gusta. Cuando los ponen en, si los cuelgan, cuando el viento los pasea, se ven muy bonitos. So if you hang it and the wind like blows through them, it's really pretty. I really like it. Okay, so ya que tengo mis cuadros, right, I have my double-sided squares, right, tengo mis pares de dos lados. Lo que voy a hacer es de que voy a tomar un lado, only one side, right? And I'm gonna add a little bit of glue in the middle, right there. Voy a agarrar un poquito de pegamento y voy a tomar esta parte y la voy a poner encima. I'm just gonna put a little pressure, right? You don't want to gob it up because it doesn't get so mucky, right? No le quieres dar un montón de pegamento porque se empieza a pegar mucho. Se ve así como lodoso. So that way you're connecting pairs by the ends, right? O sea que estamos conectando los pares con los finales, right? So I made a pair here of white and peach, right? Tengo un par de color blanco y color así como piel o durazno. Tengo un rosita con otro rosita, right? And then I'm connecting them by the ends, right? So this is a large example, right? So if I hold it, I can pull it, and I'm pulling it to the side so that you guys can see it, right? I'm pulling the sides and you see it, right? It's really cool. And again, you could put balloons in there. You could put like LEDs on there. People use them for Christmas, for Day of the Dead, for so many things, right? The little tiny one is for you guys to see what that effect looks like, right? This one is about 20 pieces. And I cut them all at the same time, so it didn't really take me that long. I think it took me longer to make glue, or to glue them than to actually cut them up, right? And see, it's a little bit goes a long way. It looks really, really cool. It holds up really well. You know, the good thing about these is that you can make them out of pretty much any kind of paper. Lo que me gustan de estas guirnaldas es de que se ven bonitas, duran bien, son fáciles de hacer y se ven muy complicadas, pero los pueden hacer de cualquier material, de periódico hasta de plástico. I even have some plastic that I made, papel picado, and I made these right here. And you can see that you can make it out of anything. And the good thing is that if you're going to use plastic, it's great for rainy outside, right? Si van a hacer papel picado de plástico, es muy bueno cuando empieza a llover afuera, porque no se echa a perder. Okay. Anybody want another walkthrough of that, of how to put the pieces together? ¿Alguien más necesita un repaso de cómo juntar estos pares? We're doing okay? All right. So, okay. So we have 10 minutes left with you guys. Thank you all so much, by the way. You guys are awesome. Thank you for sharing a little bit of your Día de los Muertos con nosotros, conmigo. I'm going to show you one last thing that I like to do. And typically I have a lot of scraps left over. So I like making paper flower collages right now. This is a little different. This is not something that you typically see. This is more something that I like doing for myself. I use it a lot for when I give gifts or when I just want to bring some color into a room. And what I'm going to do is that I am going to take some of these pieces, right? I have a lot of leftover pieces. And I use magazine covers as well. And I'm gonna start cutting some just kind of petals or just kind of elements, right? Voy a tomar un poquito de cartulina y voy a empezar a cortar elementos como pétalos, como hojitas. And this one, I'm just gonna quarter it, right? So nada más lo voy a cruzar así y lo voy a volver a doblar, right? So we're not doing that square cut, right? No estamos haciendo ese corte cuadrado, estamos haciendo algo un poquito más ligero, right? I'm trying to make petal things, right? So you know that if we cut from the center to the outside, we can get that cool effect, right? So I'm gonna use that to make these nice kind of feathery petals. I don't know. Okay, so I have my petals, right? Tengo como unos pétalos así como ondulados, right? And I'm just kind of, I don't know, just going with it, see where it goes, right? Nada más estoy paseando en las tijeras, a ver dónde nos llega. Recuerden, estamos cortando del centro a los lados. We're cutting from the center to the sides, but we're not cutting into the sides, right? We're just getting really, really close. Estamos acercándonos a la orilla, pero no estamos cortando la orilla, porque si no, hacemos confetti, y no estamos haciendo confetti, estamos haciendo papel picado, right? So we're not getting to the corners, right? We are getting to the sides, but really closely, but not all the way through, okay? So you can see now, I have the beginning of a nice little flower, right? So I have these two pieces right here. And so what I do again, I use my glue stick, right? Lo que hago otra vez es que ya que corté esta pieza, very much like papel picado, it kind of looks like a leaf, right? La desdoblé y saquaron estos pétalos, los cruzo de esta manera. So I cross them so they look like petals, right? And then what I do is that I add more to it, all right? So, un muy buen ejemplo de eso es este, right? So lo voy a poner aquí. I'm gonna put one in the center right there. Actually, I'm gonna put this one in the back because I really like the red. So, esta es una revista vieja. This is an old magazine. I just like the colors, right? Right there. I'm gonna put my red stuff right there, right? Make it look nice and neat. And then I'm gonna use some of these leftover cuts and I'm gonna fill in a lot of spaces that I feel like could use a little interesting touch, right? So this is one way that I use to not be so wasteful, right? Papel Picado is a beautiful, awesome craft. But it could be somewhat wasteful, right? Hacer el papel picado es una obra muy bonita, pero también puede ser muy, produce mucha basura. Y esta manera es como yo hago estas flores para así como para reciclar un poco de ese desecho. So I try to upcycle it, I guess, you know. And then now that I have that, right, I have a little bit of contrast thing. Sometimes I like tucking them in just to create a little bit of 3D, right? Yeah, make it interesting, right? Like a lot of people are like, oh, you know, I like laying things flat, and for me, I'm like, no, I like kind of layering things. I think that's better, right? But you do what you think is right? Remember, art is what you make of it, not what people tell you of it. So you go creative, experiment, see what you like, see what you don't like. You know, after all, it is paper, ¿verdad? Experimenten, no le tengan miedo, al contrario que nada más es solamente papel, no es nada más, right? We can't really go wrong when we're trying to do something new, right? We just gotta be okay with wanting to make mistakes, and that's fine, right? Okay. Now, I'm just gonna glue these pieces. I'm gluing these pieces in a way that are kind of like 3D almost, because I do like the openness of this, right? Like it looks really cool. So I'm trying to kind of wrap it around here. I don't know. I'm envisioning kind of like an orchid. I don't know. Estoy tratando de imaginarme una orquídea o algo por el estilo, pero okay, a ver qué me sale. All right, so let's see what happens. And then I'm gonna add, these are the eye sockets from the skull that I tried to make earlier with you guys, but you know, it's a great Cyclops. That was a great Cyclops. All right, so I'm cutting one more detail. Instead of cutting this out, I'm just gonna leave it hang out. And I'm gonna glue it right in between these two pieces, right? Make it look like it's one living, breathing thing. Right? And again, you can go as crazy as you want or as gentle as you want with this. You can use this as gift wrap. I know sometimes I like to hang them on the wall, especially in the winter when it's kind of drab out, right? And then you have this 3D kind of flower thing. Another thing that I like to do is that when I make these long petals, I like to curl them up. So I use either my glue stick or a pencil, depending on how curly I want it to be. And that really gives it like a kick, right? So cuando estoy tratando de darle un poquito de más volumen a estos así como arreglitos, uso mi tubo de pegamento, o si no, uso un lápiz para enchinar los pétalos y así les da un poquito de más dimensionalidad, se levantan un poquito más, right? And see, now I am just experimenting, yo, just showing a little bit of extra ways of, you know, how you might consider working with paper. This activity is great for small children, especially young children, like they're like 3, 4 years old, because it's teaching them how to use their fingers. It's a really good activity for young teenagers too, pretty much for everybody except people who have hand mobility issues, right? If you're, you know, someone who has arthritis, this might not be the best thing, but it's a very welcoming and accommodating activity, right? Esta es una actividad muy acomodante, es para mucha gente, para los niños de 3 años en adelante, les ayuda a desarrollar sus motores, también para los adolescentes es muy buena actividad, y con que no tengas alguna deficiencia motora de tus manos, está bien. Si tienes artritis, quizás esta no sea una, ¿cómo se dice? Una actividad para ti, pero puedes intentarlo, right? So you can try it. And there we go. We have like a nice little flower, right? Looks a little crazy, right? But it's a very unique looking flower. No one else is going to have it. Like, again, you can put it on the wall, you can put it on a gift, you can put it on wherever you want, right? You can make a costume, you can put it on your hair, right? And again, it's again a way of recycling. So today I showed you guys how to make this flower, right? We learned how to make a little bit about these Papel Picados, right? Thank you so much. You guys are all awesome, right? What else did we learn today? We learned how to do our spider cuts, like this one here, which I'm just barely opening. And what else? If you know how to do these, you know how to do these. And then finally, I just want to show you that if you don't have tissue paper, gift wrap paper is awesome. Look how cool this came out. This is so cool, right? You don't need much to make this activity. I'm pretty sure that if you tried, you can do this at home in no time. Para esta actividad no se necesita mucho. Pueden usar papel de diferentes colores, de diferentes estilos, y no cuesta tanto. Espero que les haya disfrutado. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in. If not, this is it for me. I want to thank you so much. Again, thank you so much to Villarte. If you guys are interested, follow Villarte at Villarte Chicago. Someone is loving the Bob Ross vibes. I do too, right? I had a couple of happy accidents, but they worked out. So thank you for that compliment. And yeah, if you have any questions, I'm here for you guys right now until they log me off of this chat.
Thank you so much.
No, thank you. Yes. And please feel free to share this. Share this with your kids. Share this with your friends. Do wine and cut, you know, like a lot of people do wine and sips. I like doing wine and cuts, you know. Oh, thank you, Tosha, and the babies, and the new baby.
Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. Oh, my heart. Oh, she's so big. Yeah. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Y'all have a wonderful rest of the Dia de los Muertos. If you want more information, if you want more instructions, feel free to reach out to the team at Villarte. They can get a hold of me. Muchas gracias a todos. Que estén bien.